Welcome to Fascinating Frontiers, episode 96. It's June 9th, 2026. The universe has been busy. Let's get into it. European startup Isar Aerospace just raised 270 million euros to scale its rocket program worldwide. The German launch company secured the funding round to prepare its next orbital attempt and grow operations beyond Europe. Proceeds will support manufacturing scale-up and international market entry. The round values the firm at a level that positions it among Europe's better capitalized new entrants. Isar's Spectrum rocket remains on track for a debut flight later this year. Next milestone watchers will track is the outcome of that first launch attempt and any new customer contracts announced afterward. Isar Aerospace's fresh capital arrives as Europe tries to build a more competitive launch sector. The 270 million euros will fund both the next Spectrum test flight and factory expansion needed for higher cadence. Success here would give the continent a second medium lift option alongside Ariane Group vehicles. Failure would reinforce how difficult it remains for new entrants to reach reliable operations. The company's first orbital attempt later this year will determine whether it can attract follow-on government contracts. Now shifting to regulatory developments in satellite networks, regulators removed a looming construction milestone that Amazon faced for its low Earth orbit broadband network. The waiver allows the company to continue deploying satellites without immediate penalty. Officials cited public interest in fostering a second major broadband constellation alongside existing operators. Amazon has already launched initial test satellites and is ramping production. Observers will watch the pace of additional launches and service rollout timelines in coming months. You know what is fascinating about this? If every Starlink satellite were the size of a city bus, the entire constellation would still fit inside a volume smaller than Earth's atmosphere. Each spacecraft flies in a carefully chosen orbital shell, where slight differences in altitude and inclination create natural separation. Operators fire tiny thrusters only when ground tracking predicts a close approach measured in kilometers, not meters. A single shell at 550 kilometers altitude can hold thousands of satellites because they move at 7.6 kilometers per second and pass one another in fractions of a second. Yet the real puzzle is how the system scales when adding another 10,000 satellites requires predicting conjunctions years in advance, while accounting for solar activity that changes atmospheric drag. No one yet knows the practical limit before collision risk or radio interference forces operators to thin the shells or move to higher orbits. On a different note, Beijing has narrowed commercial rocket providers eligible to fly a new low-cost cargo spacecraft to the Tiangong station. The move expands the role of private companies in routine station resupply. Selected entities will compete for missions that previously relied solely on state rockets. The program aims to lower costs while maintaining reliable delivery of supplies and experiments. Next steps include final selection of operators and initial demonstration flights. China is also exploring commercial data purchases rather than building every capability itself. A new proposal suggests procuring satellite imagery and analysis the same way governments already buy weather or communications data. The approach would let agencies access commercial datasets without building every capability in-house. Recent open-source analysis of Middle East imagery by a Chinese firm highlighted the growing quality of private products. Officials are weighing how such purchases could support both civil and security needs. Watch for pilot procurement programs and any policy changes that follow. Institutional money continues to flow into the broader space sector as well. A subsidiary of the Taiwanese financial group plans to participate in the upcoming public offering of space exploration technologies. The move signals continued institutional interest in the launch and satellite sector. Details on share allocation remain limited pending final IPO terms. The listing would give public market investors direct exposure to Starship and Starlink progress. Investors will monitor regulatory filings for exact timing and valuation ranges. Even as investors prepare for SpaceX's listing, Rocket Lab's CEO offered a blunt assessment of who has truly scaled. The executive stated that just two companies have reached high-cadence orbital launch capability at meaningful volume. One is SpaceX, the other remains unnamed in the remark. The comment underscores how few players have moved beyond sporadic missions. It comes as Rocket Lab itself pushes toward more frequent electron and neutron flights. Industry followers will track whether additional firms close the gap in the next 2 years. Investors looking for broader exposure now have a new fund option. The asset manager introduced a new fund focused on companies involved in launch, satellites, and space infrastructure. The ETF gives investors broad exposure without picking individual stocks. It joins a growing list of sector-specific vehicles tied to commercial space growth. Assets under management and initial holdings will be reported in coming disclosures. Performance relative to broader aerospace indices will be watched closely. While commercial activity dominates headlines, the night sky still offers quiet observational treats. The two bright planets continue their close approach visible after sunset. Venus officially passed north of Jupiter earlier today. Observers can compare their relative brightness and slight color difference with the naked eye or binoculars. The pairing will remain noticeable for several more evenings. No special equipment is required beyond a clear western horizon. For those wanting deeper views, a remarkable new image of the Rosette Nebula has just been released. A 200-hour image captured from Tennessee shows fine tendrils of gas and dust within the star-forming complex. The portrait combines sulfur, hydrogen, and oxygen filters through a 5-inch telescope. The nebula lies roughly 5,000 light-years away in Monosaurus. Such long integrations highlight previously unseen filaments where new stars are condensing. Similar deep surveys of other regions are planned by the same imager. Meanwhile, planning continues on flagship missions. An astronaut photograph highlights urban development, green corridors, and maritime traffic around the Northern California metropolis. The image shows how the city's layout interacts with surrounding hills and the bay. Such regular station imagery supports studies of coastal urbanization and habitat change. The crew continues adding to the long-running Earth observation archive. New passes over the region are expected in coming weeks. New analysis of Sentinel-5P measurements shows several regions decoupling rising prosperity from worsening pollution. The trend appears in cities that adopted stricter emissions rules while expanding economically. Space-based monitoring provides consistent global coverage that ground networks alone cannot match. Researchers compared nitrogen dioxide levels against GDP data over multiple years. Follow-up studies will examine which policy mixes produce the strongest improvements. On the science planning front, agency officials have begun outreach to lawmakers about additional resources needed to meet the current lunar timeline. The conversations focus on lander development and supporting infrastructure. No formal budget request has been released yet. Lawmakers will weigh the ask against other priorities in upcoming appropriations debates. Progress on those talks will shape whether the 2028 landing target stays realistic. The virtual session will review science goals and technology needs for the planned flagship mission. Participants include astronomers and instrument developers working on exoplanet characterization. The 10 a.m. PT start allows broad North American attendance. Slides and recordings will be posted afterward on the NASA Science site. Future seminars will drill into specific instrument concepts. Keep an eye on those demonstration flights from China as commercial cargo operations take shape. That covers today's space and science news. Share this with a fellow space enthusiast if you found it interesting. I'm Patrick in Vancouver. See you tomorrow. And before you go, this show is part of the NARA Network, a family of daily podcasts covering tech, science, markets, and more. If you enjoyed today's episode, give Planetarian Daily a listen. Daily breakthroughs in science, health, and longevity. You can explore the whole lineup at neuronetwork.com. This episode used AI voice synthesis of my voice. Editorial selection and analysis are my own.
Drifting softly through